Hi there, and this episode of Your Starting Point is with Jenny Jarvis. And Jenny, I'm going to introduce you now by reading out kind of your titles and everything that you're involved with. So just bear with me once I get through all of this. So it's Jenny Jarvis, MBA, FRSA, leadership practitioner, author, chair, vice chair, and specialist in transformation and organizational behavior. So
It's
you're
not on a
pretty
short
busy.
list.
How do you have time for all of that is probably my first question, but I'm interested, what does FRSA stand for?
So I'm very fortunate to be a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, which is not based in London, but actually operates across the whole UK and internationally. And it's an amazing institution, 270 years old, a place of lots of innovation and creativity, and the birthplace of lots of our systems in the UK. So very lucky to be part of that.
Wow. And your full-time role is Chief Operating Officer for the Energy Saving Trust. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And again, for those that don't know, including me, because I've only ever worked in small businesses, you see, what is a Chief Operating Officer?
It's a great question. And actually, it's one of those really odd job titles because a chief operating officer can mean many different things in different companies. So, in some companies, actually, the role looks after everything to do with IT and finance and infrastructure. Whereas in my organization, the operating part is actually being responsible for all of our delivery, our operational delivery. But also in my mix is business development, so finding new funding and new strategic partners, our sort of digital and data, so all of our infrastructure and of our online services, and also includes looking at sort of strategy, so how the business is going to think about evolving and growing in the future. So it's quite a wide-ranging role when it comes to our organization.
A lot of big questions, I think, you're trying to solve there. I think for bigger, would you say your big businesses you're involved with? I mean, I can see that you've been managing director at places, a director at places, now you're COO. Most of the business you work for, kind of bigger businesses.
I'd say it's been a mixture, and actually, all the organisations I've been lucky to work for all have, in some ways, some public interest. So, I've worked for a private company that spent a lot of time, which is Reed, but spent a lot of time helping people who are unemployed getting into work, and that was a medium to large size company. I've worked with some very small charities, even though they had a really big reach and remit, a big responsibility. Sometimes, actually, the organisation can be quite small when they're delivering on a big scale like that, and working with lots of other partners to deliver on a bigger scale. And right now, our company's quite large. It's over 500 staff, so enough staff to make quite a big impact across the UK and Europe.
Okay, and I suppose it doesn't matter what size of business you're in, you still need a leader, don't you? You might have a different title, but effectively you're a leader of some sort. So you're an author of a book, Lead with Confidence, and it's interesting because we haven't covered the subject of leadership yet, and it's one of these subjects that I'm really interested in, but I think most of my time always gets absorbed by kind of the specialism I'm involved. I'm involved in like marketing and digital marketing, and I don't devote enough in understanding about leadership. And I'm sure any team that has worked with me is probably understands that I haven't been spending enough time in leadership. So I think I'm looking forward to this. So did you always sort of look at your career and think, I'm a leader, I'm going to go and get these roles? Or did you kind of have this ambition to always have these roles, or did you just fall into it? How do you think that worked out?
Yeah, I think I have to say that I never imagined I would be a leader. It's sort of, if you'd asked me when I was a teenager or in my early 20s, what do you think you'll do? I didn't have big aspirations. I really wanted to do something that interests me. I've always had an interest in helping people, so I knew I wanted to include that in my career. And when I left university, I was lucky to go to university. I was lucky to do a subject which was history I enjoyed, but I had no idea what I wanted to do next. And I actually got an administration job, a temporary job, working with Reed. And that was to start helping people who are unemployed to go into work. And I remember at the time thinking I really enjoyed the work, which I think is always important. If you get to enjoy the work and what you get to do, if you enjoy the team you work with, if you've got a manager that supports and encourages you, which is so important to help you on your career pathway or on your job pathway, I thought that was good. I was happy. And I imagined at the time that I might think about becoming an office manager role. So somebody that might take responsibility for making sure that a team works well and an office works well. But what I found in my career, and I think so many leaders I've spoken to actually have been quite similar, that they didn't necessarily aim for the top or aim for a senior leadership role. And they just wanted to do a really great job at the job they were doing right there and then. So, and I always advise people when I'm coaching them and talking about leadership, it's not about job titles. It's not about trying to say what's my next step and how am I getting there, although we should be encouraging ourselves to develop. It's about how do I really make the most of the role I've got now? How do I really make it an advantage? How do I really work with others? And I found by doing that, my career steps just kept progressing. I kept creating opportunities as well as being given them. I think because I was doing a good job, because I showed curiosity and passion and interest. But every time I've been able to take on new roles and new steps and create opportunity. And eventually, once I started to become sort of more of a senior leadership role, I think perhaps that's when I first started to believe that I was a leader and I could be a leader. But it doesn't happen overnight, and you have to have the patience. But yes, I never would have imagined it. And I think once you get into that position and you start doing some leadership development and thinking about your career and yourself and how you progress from here, then you can really start seeing other opportunities that you can help others to understand what it means to look at leadership, which is why I wrote my book.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's probably plenty of people out there that do have aspirations to be the leader. They might be working in a restaurant and they want to be the manager one day, whatever it may be. But I think you're right, and you've got to get the fundamentals right. You want to do the best job you can in the role that you're at the moment. Otherwise, you're probably never going to get to where you want to be in the first place, I suppose. But one thing you mentioned is that right from the off, you were quite happy to take on responsibility, being the office manager or something like that. So is that just a simple thing that leaders have to have and have to want, is prepared to take responsibility?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point and a great point. And I also agree, leaders aren't just people sitting in offices like I am now. People are leaders who take that responsibility, aspire to run anything or take the leadership role in any context. And I think you're right. I think some of the differences are if you're prepared to stand up, be counted for, take charge or take the accountability, be given extra responsibilities. It doesn't have to be a whole suite of responsibility in one go, but just showing aptitude, saying, I'm prepared to try this, and give yourself a chance and put in place the support you need, I think is so important. And then seeing that can lead to new responsibility. And I always find if you do that one step and that one bit of responsibility, it gives you a bit of confidence. And the more confidence you have, you build up your sort of competence in delivering and leading and managing, and then it keeps growing. But you need to take the first step to get that ball rolling, I think.
Yeah. And I'm not sure whether or not this is your department, but, sometimes people will be given extra responsibility. But then there's probably two types of people. Well, there's probably about three types of people. There might be one person who goes, no, you're okay, that's not for me. But the other two types of people, yeah, happy to do that. Let me do that. And then the other person is, yeah, I'll do that. How much am I getting paid? Like extra, that responsibility. Do you think, because you don't want to be that kind of person that just gets walked all over and taken advantage of, but at the same time, is it okay to kind of demand something or ask for something back for that extra responsibility that you've taken on? Have you got an opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think just to say, the first one's okay too. If you want to try something and actually realize it's not for me, I think that's really important to say, maybe not right now, or maybe again in the future, but to find your right place. I think when we're given opportunities, I personally didn't immediately say, and does that come with extra salary or extra benefits? I think sometimes we've got a lot of people who have a chance to perhaps prove themselves and to get be given an opportunity, and it's not just about the sort of financial benefit we get. Sometimes taking opportunity gives you new stakeholders, new relationships, new skills, new breadth of understanding, new learning. It enhances you and it widens your CV and gives you more that you can do. So sometimes those benefits can't always see the financial benefit. At the same time, I think it's fair that we are remunerated and paid for what we do. So I would say there's different ways of looking at this. Perhaps you try something. If you're doing a good job at it, it's a good time to say to your manager, you've given me this. Are you happy with what I'm doing? I feel like it's going well. Do you also feel the same? I've been looking and benchmarking this and thinking that maybe there could be some extra reward that comes with this. Can we have a conversation on it? But I wouldn't jump to that straight away is my recommendation. I think we want to make sure that we can also prove that this is something we're really keen to do and that we can do.
Yeah. No, yeah, I certainly fully agree with that. And so you've gone about your career, you're obviously wanting to do the very best of the role that you're in. You've taken on more responsibility. But you've kind of carried on and carried on. So at first you wanted to be that, maybe an office manager or something. But you've obviously gone to that and you've carried on. Now, there are lots of people that would have been that office manager and maybe an office manager for 20 years. There must be something in you that kind of maybe pushed yourself to look for more and progress and progress and progress. What do you think that is?
Yeah, I've come to realize there must be, because otherwise it doesn't just happen by accident, does it? I think partly it is that wanting to do a really great job, and I think I get real satisfaction and reward from seeing things working out well and seeing that actually I personally can touch something or engage with something and make a difference. And seeing that happen, I think rewards and excites you. Thinks actually I'm going to keep pursuing this because I can see that when I do something positive and it can have a positive outcome, then I'm going to keep trying that. So I think there's something there that's almost that cycle that you go on of really trying to see if you can keep bettering what you can do or adding more value and recognizing and seeing that really good feeling that comes from making a difference, particularly in all the work I've done, which has really been about helping others. So it does have a real tangible difference. I think there's also something where if you have I'm always really curious. I would always say to people, one of the best behaviors to bring into any role or any organization is curiosity. Ask those key questions and find out what's working. If you like puzzles, look at how you can sort of help or be involved, because I think the more people do that, the more your appetite and your interest grows. And actually, I think that's a really good driver as well. I'd also say, I think that there have been times, and this doesn't just happen to women, I really appreciate this, but I think there have been times when I have found I've perhaps been underestimated or actually sometimes just not appreciated. There are times I think we will all find in a workplace where we do something great. Not everyone knows we've done it. Maybe no one knows we've done it. And it can be frustrating, but I think I've always found that as a bit of fuel to my fire to say, well, I know I personally did a good thing here. I made a difference and I'm going to keep doing that, because I do generally find that in the end, we can get recognized, we can get rewarded, and it's partly about what we do for ourselves as well. So I'm sure there is a driver, but it's really hard to describe. And I think everyone has their own drivers. And actually, sometimes that changes. So sometimes it's a really amazing leader that inspires you and you want to do a great piece of work with them because they're helping to progress you in your way. Sometimes it's the nature of your work, the context of your organization. Actually, I'm really driven to keep improving myself here because what I do makes a difference in this context. And sometimes it's because we just really love working in the team we're in and we want to do a great thing for the team we're with, and that drives us to keep being better as well. So it can be a whole load of different motivating factors.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's two ways to look at it, isn't it? Let's just say you have done a great piece of work and sometimes you're not appreciated or people haven't noticed it or you don't think they've noticed it. And there's two ways to respond there. And obviously you've taken surely the better way, haven't you? To use it as a driver, to know that I've done a good job. And next time I'm going to do the same again and people might notice or what have you. The other alternative is to maybe feel a little bit bitter, maybe vocalize your disappointment that you haven't been, but you might really feel like you want to do that, but you've got to think, what are the outcomes of those two options? Surely the first option, it will better your career by using that as a positive driver to do better as well next time and continue doing that rather than showing any sort of, bitterness, shall we say. So, I mean, you've had many leadership roles. Have any of them, have you felt natural in any of them? Do you feel like you belong in those roles? Is it a case in the earlier days you thought, oh, this is a bit of a buzz, but am I good enough kind of thing? And later on in your career, does it come naturally? You think, well, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. I'm really good at this. I mean, you tell me.
Yeah, I think you're right that it becomes a little bit more natural. I think my very first proper leadership role running a company, I actually came back from a holiday and found out that I was a number 2 role, and I immediately had to start running the company with really no notice. And that was really exciting, but really daunting. And I remember thinking that I had to call on all the training I'd had and think about all the learning I've got and all the observations I've had of great leaders as well. But also had an amazing team I work with. And actually, leadership can be a lonely role, but it's really important to draw on the support of others and colleagues. But I think probably in that role, I had the most instances of what we call imposter syndrome, which is a phrase that we use, I think, when people generally feel like, actually, am I good enough? I'm doubting myself. Can I do this? My advice on this is always the best way to overcome imposter syndrome is to try it and learn and improve. And every time we do that, it becomes more natural until we stop thinking about those things, such as presenting. Sometimes leaders have to present, and that can be something that probably even the best leaders still feel some fear of. The more practice we get, the more confident we get, and the more confident we get, the more encouraged we are. I'd definitely say that over the years, I notice now, and I think it's important to notice when we feel confident, which is partly, again, that kind of idea of leading with confidence, because why is it? And sometimes I think it's because we've become so settled, we've done something enough times, we are feeling like we've got a safe environment where we can sometimes fail if we need to, but we can learn and improve. We've got great manager or peer support, and you've got that confidence there. And that's when you notice and actually think, do you know what, I am settled with this, and I do feel quite assured that I can lead. And I'd say my leadership roles as I've got older, or just had more opportunity to lead, I'm really clear that actually I am in the right place. I am a confident leader, and it's backed up by evidence. And you can't ignore the evidence in the end. When you've had these roles in the past, when you've helped and supported people, when you've drawn on lots of tools, when you've had the right learning, really the evidence outweighs your own potential fears. So it's still going to be there. I think we all still experience it, but over time I've realized that really all that practice over the years has helped me feel that confidence.
Now, normally, most of the advice I give to people, or I've heard, is with anything really, is honesty is the best policy. So when you're looking for help, or you need, want to bounce ideas off people and all this kind of stuff, is that the same for a leader? Like, if you haven't got the confidence or something, but you're supposed to be running the company, so do you open up to your team around you, your closest kind of advisors, and sort of, are you open with how you're feeling, or do you have to sort of, cover some of that up while you're talking to them, trying to get some information and try and get some confidence out of them? Maybe, I'm not sure. What would you think?
I think it's a tricky one, and you have to get the balance right. And I think that there is something around finding really good, trusted, open relationships with colleagues, particularly if there's something when you really haven't got experience in this area, and saying, this is not my forte. I'm confident I can lead well in all these other areas, but I don't know a huge amount about this topic. I know actually other people in the room do. Let's have a conversation together. I see this as something actually being a shared leadership role here, and how can we get better? And I think that's important. I think at the same time that there is a requirement as leaders. You see that many leaders will go through something where they actually don't always have the answers, but we don't inspire huge amounts of confidence if we spend our whole time wandering around saying to people, I don't know about this, I'm not certain about this, because part of our duty is really to take on some of that doubt and anxiety for the whole organization, some of that uncertainty, and still lead with confidence through it. Because there are many instances, I feel, where there is no one perfect answer. There's no complete right way of doing something. There might be two of the worst case scenarios and you pick the best one. So there still might be risks, there still might be flaws, you still might have some doubts if it's the right path. But still the leader role is to take that responsibility and to make decisions and to inspire confidence in others. That doesn't mean in any way lying or faking it. That's not the right thing. I think I absolutely believe in authentic leadership and being trustworthy and transparent with people. But it's about being transparent with the right things. What do people need to know and understand? People don't need to know if you've got a few doubts about how you're conducting a piece of work. That's not going to inspire confidence, but also really, actually, your role is to try, experiment, and lead from the front. So I think you have to get the balance right. And as I say, I think drawing on trusted support from key colleagues is also really important.
Okay. And so about the book that you wrote, Lead with Confidence, I suppose the first question is, why did you write it? And then also, was there anybody in mind that you thought would this be particularly suited for? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so in a way, there's sort of two questions come together in one answer in some regards. So initially, I wrote it because I had started a leadership role and at quite a young age. So I wouldn't necessarily say that everyone would start a leadership role at 23, but I was 23 when I started my first national role. which, again, you can imagine some of the doubts there, taking on a national role when you're that young. But the evidence is there. And I think this comes back to what I said earlier about I'd become in just 2 short years very specialist in this piece of work that I was then leading. So I was able to draw on what I knew. But I didn't really have any role models. And I think particularly, and you'll know this as well, that the number of women in leadership roles has really grown over the years, but there weren't that many senior leaders when I was younger. So I couldn't see many that I could aspire to or think, how might I follow some of what they've been doing? I had some great male leaders that I could look to understand their ways of working as well, but I was missing female role models. I also just felt like at the time I didn't have really any tools or reference material that I wanted to look at in terms of very simple how to do something, how to go about negotiating, how to meet with external partners, how to go to a networking event, even just some of the basics around how to introduce myself to my team or how to line manage people and deal with some of the hard conversations you might have to have. So I realized as I got older that actually what I'd want to do is write something that for the version of me that was 23, or the version of someone, whatever age they are, if they're aspiring to be a leader or they're looking to take that step, or they're already a more junior leader and they're looking to advance as a leader, what would be really useful? So I wrote the book for that reason. I wrote it because I also wanted to, I think, passing on advice. And I think it's fantastic that you do these calls and record this, because getting to hear from other people is a great way, that oral history of passing on information. So part of my book does contain advice from lots of amazing leaders as well that I wanted to share with people. And it also contains a whole set of tools and frameworks which people can use. So I think the book is really for anyone that's interested in thinking about, I might be a leader in the future, or I'm interested in giving that a go, or what's it all about leadership? What could this involve, to get a sense of it, all the way through to sort of more established leaders that think, actually, I'm sure there's some good chance for a refresher on some of the key techniques and first principles around leadership they can refer to. So it's a real mixture, but certainly that driver was for my younger self that didn't have access to this content.
Well, that leads me very nicely on to my next question, is about, talking to your younger self. 23, that is a young age to be taking on a national leadership role. So maybe you have to go a bit younger than that, because I think when you were 23, it sounds like you got your head screwed on. But, what one piece of advice would you give a younger self, or what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? There's 2 bits of advice. So one is very basic, but something that someone said to me when I was about 24, and it was one of the most practical of bits of advice was, you can't tell tone in email. And I think that I thought I was being really friendly on sending emails and being clear and instructional. And she read one of my emails and said that to me. And she was really right. And actually, that's a bigger message around, sometimes the best way to get things done isn't to be too formal, isn't to write everything down, isn't to request things on email all the time. We can't underestimate the power and the effectiveness of human interaction and engagement and getting things done. And I think that was helpful, practical advice. So on the one hand, that's my first bit of advice. But I think also I would tell myself just not to limit yourself. In some ways, I probably, if I hadn't had the opportunities, I could have really contained my future and just said to myself, actually, the best I'm going to be is this. Not that there's anything wrong with being an office manager. As I said, I love organization and stationery. So I thought that would be a great job for me for the future. But it's a good thing I didn't say to myself, I'm going to stop there. Actually, I think it's really important to be open, be curious. As I said earlier, what else could I do? What other opportunities are there? What possibility thinking have I got about if I just did this? Or and I think we might have talked before, but one of the step ups I had in a management role is I could see the organization had a gap in leading on a certain area of work around quality. And so I spoke to my manager and said, what if somebody led this area? He sort of said, great, Jenny, well, what if it's you? And I hadn't actually even necessarily thought he was going to say that, but it was about realizing that, what if is a really great question. So not to contain your aspirations.
Now, do you think there are people out there that might have psychological barriers because maybe they haven't got the inspirations around them? I don't know about your upbringing, your family, or the people around you, but I don't know if you saw female leaders around you, or if you had family that gave you confidence or this, that, either. But do you think there's a lot of people out there that just don't have that confidence or even belief or even aspiration to do half the things you've done because the people around them maybe haven't achieved those things?
I think that's really likely, and I think that's actually really common, and I think we see that quite a lot. I've seen that a lot in the different programs I've worked on in terms of youth programs or working with young people who are going through employment journeys and looking to that next step. And really, sometimes what it takes is great engagement, like like the work you do and work like this, because I think we need to encourage more possibility thinking and say to people, actually, let's not be contained by your background or where you come from, or whether you did have those role models. I think there are so many capable, brilliant people that we want to make the most of and really maximize all they can bring to our country, to society and organizations, and really not to contain yourself too much. It's not quite the same same setup, but certainly my father came from a background where there wasn't huge aspiration for him. His dad worked in an amazing factory, his mum didn't work, and he was the first person to do anything in terms of study, and he went on and has done a brilliant job and really advanced his career in a different way, and actually he didn't have those role models. And I think sometimes you might have within you just that bit of fire, that bit of a seed that says, I think I could do more than I'm doing now. And you might not know how you're going to do that. You might not know who to turn to. And hopefully you can, Starting Point is a great place, but where else can I go to? Where else can I get that inspiration? I've just got something in me. And I think even if you don't have all those references or all that support, and you're not fortunate in the way that I know I was, I think you inherently know that you can do more. And you might see yourself doing it not in a work context, but in another context, in sport or in your social environment or with your family. You might be someone that naturally takes charge or actually thinks, I can do more here. And if you've got that in you, then I think, really let that grow, listen to that inner voice, and think about how can you get help, because I think it's really important that everybody gets a chance to contribute.
No, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, it would be incredible if everybody in the country reached their full potential, wouldn't it? We sometimes maybe look at leaders of countries and you think, is that all we've got to offer these guys? And I'm not going to get political, but from any party, or you see sort of heads of companies, organizations, thinks, really, can we not do better than that? And I'm sure we can. So it would be lovely if people watching are inspired to really sort of push themselves, I think. So thank you very much, Jenny. It is now part of the quick fire round. Okay.
Ooh,
so questions here. We're going to try and do this as quickly as possible. I'm going to put the pressure on you. So the first one, what's your favorite career milestone?
Oh, I think my first one was actually passing a really massive government audit with European funding, which was really nerve-wracking when I was about 25, and saved us about 2 million. And it was terrifying at the time, but it was massive. So that was it.
Wow. Top productivity tool. What saves you time and gets things done?
Well, I'm actually just starting to use Copilot, and I find it really helpful. It does loads of clever things around creating presentations for you and sorting out your emails. So I think right now it's probably that. But I love Excel, is my other comment.
Copilot is good, but the image creator on Copilot is incredibly frustrating, and I find myself arguing with it all the time. On to the next one. What would you choose to climb the career ladder? Brains or determination?
That's really challenging. I think it's got to be determination. I think we can develop ourselves, we can learn, we can upskill, but you just have to have that grit and determination.
Yeah, I think everybody's answered that. If you've got brains and you haven't got determination, I think you struggle. It's the same with sport. If you've got talent and really don't push yourself, you're not going to achieve. So, right, are you a morning or evening person?
I'm a morning person. It's very annoying from my household, but yes, up early.
Get up.
Well, it depends, 6-ish.
6-ish. And what are you starting work at? Have you got what have you got to do after 6 o'clock? Are you going to the gym?
Yeah, 2 or 3 days a week, I do an online exercise class with a live group at home, and then a bit of yoga, and then I'll go to the office.
Very good. The best source of info to keep up to date with your role. So you might be looking at other leadership content or what have you. Where would you go to for that?
For mine, it's really sector specific. So the work we do is in climate change. We get incredible bulletins, lots of government briefings, and I have an amazing team internally that provide us with lots of information as well. So I try and download as much as I can.
That's easy for you then. I've got to sort of scroll through Twitter and LinkedIn to try and get any decent content. Go-to stress relief technique?
Or massage or singing, one of the two.
Singing. It's singing in the shower. So I'm sure that could actually probably help. Yeah. Oh, well, you're in the choir, aren't you? So that's okay.
Yes.
My singing is not going to help anybody, I don't think. But one word to describe your career.
That should be a quick answer, and I can't think of a quick answer. Inspiring. I'm really inspiring. Yeah. I think starting as an administrator and getting to where I got to was, inspiring. I
second that. What's the most important trait you look for in teammates?
Collegiate, and by that I mean truly collaborative and considerate in how they collaborate with one another.
Very good. And the last question, top interview tip.
I think my top interview tip is that you're going there as much to find out if that's what you want to do, as well as them finding out about you. So have some brilliant questions that you ask at the end. Never leave an interview without asking a really good question. And it can be anything. It doesn't matter. Just something that's high quality, that really acknowledges you understand the company. I think that's really important. Yeah,
and also I think the interview is also you interviewing them, isn't it? You've got to make sure the right job for you. So to sit and just answer questions wouldn't be fair on yourself. So Jenny, you've been amazing. Thank you very much. Learned lots, and we will be getting your book as soon as it comes out. I think month. I think
9th of January.
9th of January. Looking forward to that. Thank you very
much. So much. Lovely to chat to you.